Welcome to Healing for the Soul podcast, with this being season number 4, episode number 53. I am your host, Robin Stoltman, and today I have a returning guest, which I'm excited about, Lawerence Rook, who is on the show talking about different aspects of not just the financial, like what we talked about last time, but also about chirology. And before we get started, remember every week I feature different guests to help you become the best version of yourself through different methods you may not have heard of or thought of. So let's get started. Thank you so much, Lawerence, for returning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robin. Great to be back.
So what is your specialty? I know you've got a lot of different ones.
So yeah, my day job, so to speak, is I work as a chirologist. And what I do as a chirologist is I study people's hands in relation to their psychology, their personality, their emotions, and looking at things like people's strengths, their weaknesses, their motivations, relationships, things like this.
That's really interesting. Like, one thing that I just came to my mind was, is that like through a picture? Like you just take a picture of somebody's hand, or do you actually look at their hand and see the different lines, or how does that exactly work?
Yeah, so I have a private practice in which I will see people face to face, but because it's a very unusual job and I'm quite I put a lot of information out about the subject. People come and see me from all over the world, and I can do it through photographs. Yeah, they have to be detailed photographs, but yeah, as long as I can see the fingerprints, I'm in.
Oh, so it's even the fingerprints you use too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking at all different kind of markers, shapes, fingers. The technical word is biomarkers. So, for example, the fingerprints are very interesting. They actually develop in the first trimester of pregnancy, and they form from the same ectodermal layer of skin as what the brain and the nervous system forms from. So what it means is that the fingerprints are very linked to the brain and the nervous system. So what's going on in someone's brain and essentially their whole body can be read to a degree through the fingerprints. And there's lots of interesting scientific research on this, which correlates fingerprints with mental health conditions or personality types and things like this.
I think the forensic need to be using it that way. I'm just
Yeah,
the first thing I think about the fingerprints, everybody's for the forensic part of it. But no, that's amazing. I don't know how many people actually know that about for the fingerprints. Because I know
even
identical twins. Do identical twins even don't they have separate fingerprints too, if I remember right? Wasn't the only distinguishing between?
That's correct. And sort of mainstream science doesn't quite understand why exactly identical twins have got different fingerprints, and there are different theories as to why, and in my opinion none of them are particularly compelling. But yeah, the fingerprints are a real mystery, and the amount of information encoded in these unique pads that everyone has is really miraculous. And I can spend 30 minutes just talking to somebody about their fingerprints and all the ways it's going to impact their career, their personal life, their relationships, things like this.
Wow, that's awesome. Because I've taken the handwriting analysis. So I have I understand the handwriting, and oh my gosh, that is not wrong at all. I mean, the only thing you can't tell about somebody's handwriting is their age, sex, or the future in the handwriting. But now I'm thinking, okay, well then you add that with something like that, like the palm and the reading. It's so is that really accurate as well, like the handwriting is?
Yeah, well, I haven't actually studied graphology, which is the handwriting one, but I mean, logically, I would imagine it would be very accurate, because everything is an expression of ourselves, and everything reveals deeper truths about our nature and our personality and our existence. So if somebody is an expert on body language, they could tell you lots of information about the way you're sitting right now, or the way that I'm sitting right now. And if somebody like myself has studied the hands, then I can tell lots of information about how somebody holds their thumb and what angle their little finger is at. And then if somebody studied handwriting, they can tell lots and lots of information about how they cross their T's and the loops under their F's and things.
That's true. I understand that part now. Because
Yeah,
when I learned that there was 450 ways just to cross the T, I'm like, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot more than I
yeah,
thought. That was just like,
yeah,
whoa.
yeah.
So then how does that work? Like, is that similar to like the palm reading? Because like when you're talking about like the chirology and you're using the hand, does that use like the back side too, or just the front when you're doing it? And is it like the palm reading then?
Yeah, well, there are aspects of it that are like palm reading in the sense that you're obtaining information from your hands, the distal appendage. Um, and palmistry has got a very, very long history, and almost every culture has got a history of divination of some sort from the hands. The difference between palmistry and what I do is that what I do is much more psychological and characterological, meaning I'm not looking to try and predict the future. I'm much more looking at who you are as a person right now, what you can do with your life, the way you are, how you can make choices that benefit you, how you can develop yourself to be a more grounded, more balanced, more whole, more spiritual person, how you can find the most fulfillment in a career, what partner best suits you. So it's really much more about somebody taking control and understanding themselves.
Huh. That's more like the solution based then versus like the palm reading then, if I understand correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about palmistry when it was around, so
Mhm.
go back 500 years, people were very suspicious in those times. So they
True.
were looking for answers. And if they went to see a palmist, they would want to know, are they going to have a husband that dies at sea? And, are they going to have 5 or 6 kids or whatever
Oh,
it is?
yeah.
And this is the sort of thing that people were kind of conscious of at that time. Nowadays people are becoming much, much more self-aware. People are very interested in their own psychology. People want to develop themselves. They want to know more about who they are. They ask questions about meaning and purpose. They want value in their work and career, and they want fulfillment. So this is the sort of thing that I analyze. This is the sort of thing that's most important and relevant to people nowadays. And the hand is just a tool for giving an interface for these things. And there are many reasons why. One of them is that the fingerprints are very linked to the brain. The lines on the hand are related to the nervous system also. The finger lengths are related to hormones. So when you're looking at the hand, you're looking at all these different expressions. But ultimately, the hand is a representation of who you are, and it's just a little microcosm of the whole.
That's really interesting. I
Yeah, it's
like that. Like
amazing.
one of the things that I was told, I don't know if it's true or not, but like the ring finger on the left hand side, that if it's shorter, then like so, like a little bit more shorter, like mine are here, that
Mhm,
this would mean like my mom um had more of like she's feeding more off of me for like the insulin, like the sugar, so then I'd be more
mhm,
prone to have hypoglycemia. I don't know
mm.
if that's true, but I was like, I was looking at it, I'm like, well, let's see. If that is true, then that would mean, yeah, because it's like I had that hypoglycemic, I've had those reactions, but then I thought, well, I don't know if that's true or not. So do
Mm.
you know like if that's true necessarily? Because you mentioned like the lengths of the fingers.
Yeah, so there is a huge literature really on finger length, and the primary research and the primary kind of theories within science that have been explored and propagated is that the digit ratio, which is what you're referring to, the relative lengths of the third finger and the index finger, relates to estrogen and testosterone levels. So
Oh,
what you were just displaying there is the typical estrogen finger length. And if you look at my fingers, I've got a larger third finger, which is the typical testosterone finger length. So it's more common for men to have it this way around, and it's more common for female to have it the other way around. There's lots of interesting research to show that men with higher testosterone as measured by their fingers are going to be slightly more aggressive. They're going to be more assertive. They can be higher performing athletes. They might get further in a workplace and display lots of these kind of testosterone traits. And then on the other side, if a female has got a large index finger, larger than other types, then they're going to have more estrogen related talents or skills or traits and things. So this would be things like language skills and verbal communication. But that, Robin, would just be one line of analysis from these fingers. And I would go actually a lot deeper and start to look at things like the index finger as relating to someone's sense of themselves and who they are, and therefore it becomes their finger of dominance, of control, and of responsibility and things like this. So yeah, lots to think about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
that
really
is so
cool.
awesome. Because I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm just like thinking like that is I like learning these different things. If you can't tell, I'm like, I love learning different not just the tools, but it's like learning from other people about these different things that I'm like, I had no clue existed. Like I had no clue that a chirologist was, I didn't even know what the term was. I had no clue about any of it until you were on here last time talking about the financial aspect. And then I'm like, I got to thinking, because I apply a lot of the things that I learned from other people on the podcast. Because otherwise it's like, well, what's the point of doing it? You know, like if I'm not applying, you know, like learning and applying. So that was one of the things that I got to thinking from the last time that when you were on the show was about how when you were talking about like the financial part of how like the money aspect that we need to hold on to like that gold and the silver and the crypto. So this way the central banks, they really don't have that. They can't go up. They can't do the inflation thing like the current dollar bill is. And I was wondering, would that play in like our hands then too? Or are they just going to be two separate things as far as would we be good at investing depending upon our hands? Or is that just one of those out there type things?
Yes. So the short answer would be yes. You definitely can see people that would have an inclination and specific talents for making money, and it really comes down to what somebody values. And I can look at someone's hand and quite comfortably see what's kind of most important to them in life. So for example, it's very easy for me to identify somebody who loves art and loves to be creative. You know, that's going to show up as a pattern quite quickly. It's also going to be very easy for me to see somebody who loves to work with people and loves to have conversations, or somebody who is a scientist and loves to have ideas, or somebody that's very good at business. And then somebody that's really good at making money, for example, would kind of relate to that business type thing. So it's really about what somebody values often. And if somebody is really, really creative, then very often they put their creativity or being in a play or being an actor or an actress, you know, for them, their art is the most important thing. So they're probably not going to put 100% of their energy into trying to make money. Whereas if I look at someone's hand and they've got a businessman's hand, and you know they're a sharp, quick thinker that's good at summarizing things and very good at understanding people and can kind of cut through any nonsense, then you kind of know that that person could be very well off and quite successful because that's where their interest lies. So I think it's really about it's kind of about personality. But then if somebody is a creative, artistic type, that doesn't mean they can't be good at investing. It just means they might need to work at it a little bit harder, or they might need to read some books which they've never read before, or they've never been interested in before. But then just to relate it back to the whole financial system now, I mean, the reason I got interested in this whole financial crisis essentially is because this affects everyone. And I've always been a therapist and I've never paid much attention to finances, but right now everybody needs to pay attention to finances, whether they're interested in them or not. It's far too important a time in history not to be really aware of what's going on with inflation, with money printing, with devaluing of currency. This affects everybody, which is why I wrote a book recently about it, and it's an intro for everyone to understand what's going on and how to protect themselves.
Well, yeah, I know I read some of your book already about what you were talking about for like the financials, and it's just like, yeah, you've hit a lot of things like dead center on the financial aspect. And when we were talking last time too, it's like there was a couple of people that are asking me questions, and I'm like, after you and I talked, I'm like, hold on to the money, hold on to the old coins, do not let them go, because I'm like, because like literally, I got to thinking that if we want to be able to buy bread, for example, and now the dollar bill is worth a whole penny, I'm like, and bread costs $20. Well, that $20, it's not going to be $20. That $1 bill is only worth a penny. I'm going to need a whole lot of pennies just to get that $20, to be able to buy that bread. But I'm like, it'd be so much easier if I had to hold on to that old coin in order just to buy that bread that I needed. So I can see like how the financial shift is happening. I don't know for sure if it's an exact shift though. Like the people that already are in the poverty, like the scarcity mindset. Now, if they don't invest, for example, they don't invest in crypto, they don't have old coins, they don't do any of those things. I'm just thinking down the road, the way things are going, that maybe it's a possibility that they would end up dying off because they wouldn't be able to eat.
Yeah, well, it's a really tragic situation that lots of people find themselves in, and it's deeply concerning. But there are definitely things that people can do to really start benefiting from what's going on. And two great things really that everyone can do is start to buy and put their money into silver, because silver across time, it holds and grows its value. Yeah, so silver is real money. So what we have at the moment is not real money, it's paper, it's fake. Yeah. And then this is why central banks can just print more of it and create inflation. But you can't really create silver inflation, because you can't just suddenly increase the silver supply load. So I highly recommend that everybody holds onto their silver jewelries, and maybe get some silver coins from bullion dealers. And as you said, very old coins, coins from sort of 50 years ago, and so they contain bits of silver in, and that would be valuable because there's silver in those coins, and that's what makes the old coins valuable. And then the other two options I think are very important for people is, if possible, buy a little bit of gold if they have any savings. Money in a bank is very risky. People sometimes don't appreciate the risks of keeping money in a bank, but we've seen very recently, just in Canada, the government has been freezing people's banks, and in Australia last year with the pandemic, they were taking money from people's banks, and it's very easy to have people's bank accounts frozen. And once money is in a bank, it's the bank's, it's not yours anymore. So the bank owes it to you, and if the bank says, sorry, we haven't got it, or actually we need it to pay something else, or we need it to bail ourselves in, then people can lose all of their life savings. So what I would advocate is, if people have got savings in a bank, seriously think about putting some of that into gold and putting that into silver, because you are the ones who then own it. And gold goes up over time. Silver goes up over time. But dollars, as you correctly said, Robin, they go down over time. And an ounce of gold now is always going to be valuable in 10 years. But $20, that's not going to be valuable in 10 years. That might not even be able to buy you a loaf of bread. So better change that $20 now for a silver coin, because then in 10 years' time, that silver coin will be able to buy you, 20 loaves of bread or something, or way more.
Yeah, well, bread was like the best example I could think of, because I remember when I was a little girl growing up, like the first time I got like the actual concept of money was, I remember when bread was like 89 cents, or you could buy bread for 99 cents a loaf. And nowadays it's not that at all.
No.
And like I went to Walmart yesterday to even get deodorant, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, the prices are above $10 for one stick. And I'm like, and this is what we're supposed to be paying? You know, that's for like the aluminum free kind. And I'm like, how does this make any sense? So when I seen those prices, I'm just like, everything's just going up. And then I'm
It's
like,
terrifying.
yeah, it is. And it's not like it's expensive, but it's like, it's one of those things that's really making me think, okay, long term, how can I protect my family? I think that's what more of this is about, is protecting our families.
Completely.
Because I think the government is
so
I was going to say that like the government's like falling apart is what it is. And we're seeing it happen very rapid.
Yeah, and you know, you don't want to be reliant on the government, really, and people need to take responsibility for their own wealth in the same way that I'm sure you would advocate people take responsibility for their own health, and they don't just, you know, listen to the mainstream. You know, you've really got to be in control of your life. And in terms of passing money on to our kids and retaining wealth through time, the way to retain wealth through time is you have to put your wealth into things that don't devalue. And dollars, pounds, yen, euros, whatever currency it is, they all devalue. So at this time in history, you know, it's critical that people don't think saving money in dollars is going to be a long-term strategy, because inflation will just completely wipe away the value of those dollars. So it's got to be really, you know, obviously if they can buy a house, fantastic. If they can buy land, fantastic. But aside from that, gold, silver, and then the other one is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is this cryptocurrency, and everybody has heard of Bitcoin really now, I think. But it's becoming so important because what Bitcoin is it's something that's decentralized, meaning there isn't a single entity that owns it. It's not owned by a government. It's not owned by a corporation. And Bitcoin has a fixed supply, which means there's only 21 million, which means it can't be tampered with. You can't have a government inflating it. You can't have a central bank printing more Bitcoin. So if you have one Bitcoin, or if you have half a Bitcoin, or if you have 0.0001 of a Bitcoin, you hold that, and then that number never changes. That's always going to be worth 0.001 of a Bitcoin or whatever it is. Whereas a dollar, they will just get printed, more come about, it gets inflated, it gets messed around with, and agents at the top of systems can completely control that monetary system. So Bitcoin is unique in that nobody else can tamper with it, and then you own it. And I believe that across time, Bitcoin will prove to be an extremely valuable asset. And very interestingly, actually, Robin, what we've seen with the war that's going on in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine at the moment, is that the local currency in Russia has really crashed because of the war, and people are liquidating their assets, and basically people have lost faith in the Russian currency. So the currency is going down in value. But as the Russian currency, the ruble, has gone down, the Bitcoin price has gone up about 20%. And this is partly because lots of Russian people are putting their money into Bitcoin because it's safer. And also the people who are in Ukraine and they're having to flee Ukraine, they've had their bank accounts closed, or their credit cards aren't going to work in a different country. But when they've put their money into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, they can take it anywhere. So they then become sovereign and are able to move around with their wealth without a government or a bank or a country taking it away. So this is definitely something I think it's so important that people look into at this time.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking more about it, you know, long term, I'm just like, because I know like the Bitcoin, it goes up and it goes down. And that's the part that I'm like, well, is it even worth putting in money into it, knowing that it goes up and then it goes down? But then when he said about like that 0.001, you'll always have that 0.001, no matter what the cost is. And that's the part that I don't understand myself, is it can go down.
Well, Yeah, so we're measuring it. The Bitcoin is measured in dollars. So that's why it appears to go up and down. But in terms of the total supply of Bitcoin, if you've got 0.001 Bitcoin, you still always got that 0.001 of the total supply. And the market value of Bitcoin will go up and down depending on how much people pour their money into it. But the way to think about it is think about it over a year period. So don't think about it month by month, think about it year by year. And since Bitcoin came out over 10 years ago, it's gone up actually every single year in value. Only 1 year it didn't. And the average it's gone up over a year is 200% each year, which means that if you picked any year other than one to put $100 into Bitcoin, by the end of that year, it would have been worth 200. And then by the end of the next year, it would have been worth 400. And then by the end of the next year, it would have been worth 800. So I think really the most sensible thing to do in a safe way, if someone wanted to invest in Bitcoin, is to put $20 a week or $20 a month, whatever they can afford, into it. And that way, they just slowly saving money. And where else are they going to put that money? Don't put it in a bank.
True.
It's not sensible to have it all in the bank. And what's going to be worth more in 10 years' time? 0.00001 of a Bitcoin or $20. So that's what you have to
And the
ask yourself.
Bitcoin.
And if you exactly, because the dollar's going down and Bitcoin's going up. So just swap them now. Swap dollars for Bitcoin, swap dollars for silver, swap dollars for gold, and then just wait 2 or 3 years, and then you'll be in such a great position.
That's one of those things I'm like, I wish I had enough money to buy to not buy all the Bitcoin, but to buy a lot of the Bitcoin. I notice like a lot of the wealthy people, they're like, we're buying as much Bitcoin as we can right now. That one thing I have noticed, like a lot of the wealthy they're ditching the dollars literally for the Bitcoin. And like Ethos is like the other one, they're Ethereum or something like that it is.
That's right.
We call it Ethos for
Ethereum.
short.
Yeah, Ethereum. Yeah, that's the one. So that's another cryptocurrency. It's a different premise to Bitcoin. It's a totally different utility. It's a bit of a deeper dive to kind of explain it. But it's got a lot of potential to change the way that we use the internet and the way in which we interact with things. So it's kind of like Ethereum is like investing in a technology, really. If people want to buy some of that, it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, this is a new way in which the internet might run, and that would be a way to think about it. Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. So overall, what would be like the best, like the top financial advice that you could give? And I know it's not like 100% sure, like nothing is.
Yeah, of course.
But what one would you say out of like what your knowledge is in relation to the cryptocurrency? If a person can't get a hold of those old silver and the gold, what would be the best for a person to invest in as far as the crypto world goes?
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'll answer that question, but just to put a little caveat in front of it, in terms of like financial advice and things, it's always about someone's own personal preference. It's all about their own well-being. It's all about their own independence, their own sovereignty, what's best for them in their situation, etc., their risk tolerance, whatever it is. But I would say almost undoubtedly within crypto, the safest one is Bitcoin for many, many reasons. But with almost every other cryptocurrency, there's big question marks that could occur, either through regulation, or there might be other competition that overtakes it, or it's not as decentralized, lots of these different issues. But with Bitcoin, it's really the only one that's could probably be claimed to be truly decentralized. And also in terms of regulation, the American government and many others around the world seem to be totally fine with Bitcoin, whereas with other cryptocurrencies, they don't like them so much, and they might try to stop people owning them and things. So yes, someone who doesn't know much about this, they can download an app on their phone and they can start buying Bitcoin from an app on their phone. And that's a very sensible thing to do. It's riskier not to. The risk is not doing that.
Well, that's very, very helpful, because it's one of those things, like I said a little bit before about the show. It's like I'm really learning to apply everything from different people that have been on the show, just because I'm like, one, I either don't want to take the time, or two, I'm like, I'm already learning so many other things. I just want to learn from other people and then go home and apply it in everyday life, just because it's like, I'm just trying to think long term. And I know a lot of these things are going to be happening. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and be SOL without anything to provide for my family. And I think that's an important aspect, because like vehicles, they even go down. Like, they go down in price. They don't go up, they go down. So that's what I'm thinking. A lot of things that just keep going down, but trying to find that really
Correct.
stable.
Yeah.
That's where this has been very eye-opening for me, that I really appreciate everything that you've been on, the last time and then now today. It's just, for me, it means a lot, because I want to be able to help people like you do. Like you even said about be able to help people with their to be financial sovereign away from everything that's going on.
Yeah, because the system's trying to take that away from people. The system is stealing people's time, it's stealing their lives, and it's squeezing them so hard that they can't make a living. So I really like the way in which you're thinking, Robin. I think it's the correct mindset to have, thinking long term. And the question then is, what can I put my money into now that will then be worth more in 5 years? You can't put it into a car, because the car's not going to be worth more in 5 years. You can't put it into dollars, because dollars aren't going to be worth more in 5 years. So we come back to gold, silver, and Bitcoin, which is something that everybody can have access to.
So like with 50 cent pieces, and like the $2 bills. I know they don't make the $2 bills anymore, but like stuff like that, would that be better to invest in or not?
If it's got silver in it, yeah. But if it's made of nickel or tin, or it's not a precious metal, then it's not going to be worth anything either. Yeah.
How does a person know what they're made out of?
You can go back in history and have a look at when they were minting coins, what they were using in that date. So if you had a coin that was from 1935, it would most likely be a silver coin, as far as my understanding would go, of how the US minted coins. But if you had a coin that was made in 2010, it's not going to be silver. There's going to be no silver in it. So when you think about coins, the objective, unless you're an expert, would be get them because they have silver in, because it's the silver quantity in those coins that's valuable, unless you know what you're talking about, and then you'll be looking for what's called the numismatic value, which is like the rarity of a coin. But you have to be an expert to know what that means.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down that road. I'll just stick with the mindset. I'll just stick with that. That's
and once
enough.
you understand how the game is played, then you can choose to opt in and opt out. And the game is very simple. You have central bankers and governments that control the money system, and they create inflation. They create inflation because it makes everybody poorer and it makes them richer. And the effects of inflation. You go to Walmart, as you say, and how do you feel? Do you feel richer or do you feel poorer? You feel poorer. So then the question is, how do you get out of that money system? And the answers are very simple. Buy stuff that's valuable that governments don't control. And that's it.
Yeah, and then hope that nobody takes it from you.
Hey, well, it's either going to be somebody else taking it from you, or it's going to be the government coming to take your dollars.
True. That is very, very, very true. I'm just like I said, my main thing is I'm just trying to plan ahead and then trying to teach other people. It's better to think long term. But I've always thought long term, and
completely. Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, is it better to think short or long term? And I'm like, maybe long.
Well, the problem is as well is that, when inflation is happening so fast, people can't think long term because they're panicking to survive in the moment. When you go to Walmart and you see the prices of stuff has doubled or gone up 30%, you can't think long term because it puts you in a state of panic and fear, and it's very, very hard to survive. So this is why it's like people have to just understand and trust the method of stacking silver, putting their wealth into gold and putting their wealth into Bitcoin, because that is their insurance policy. They are now insured. If you've got a bit of gold and it's safe in your home, if you've got a few silver coins, then that is your insurance. And if the whole money system keeps on inflating and there's chaos and people can't buy food, you've got insurance, and your insurance is some gold jewelry, some silver coins, and some Bitcoin. And nobody can take your Bitcoin. That's very, very difficult to do because you have the password for it. So people can't steal it. Yeah.
And it's very encrypted.
Exactly. Yeah. They have to break into your hard wallet and things. So yeah. And there are ways to store it safely, which I discuss in my book and stuff. So yeah, power to the people with all of this.
Yes. It's kind of refreshing to know that a lot of us as a whole are coming up just to say, hey, enough is enough of the government systems because they're not working.
No. And it's always the same. It's people who are the poorest who get hit the hardest. And these government systems are so often presented as humanitarian and presented as they're going to help everyone. And, we're for the little guy. And it's absolute nonsense. Anything, trust yourself, and you can totally be sovereign of your own well-being.
Well, I have enjoyed this conversation again with you so much. So, Lawerence, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you, to be able to say, hey, I want to know more? What's the best
absolutely
way?
So my website is lawerencerook.com. And my book can be found there. It can also be found on Amazon. There's audiobooks and things. And of course, people can get in contact with me for a chirology reading as well.
Awesome. I'm thinking like the chirology myself, but I'm like, I already know that I'm a helper. That one's kind of like, I'm better at the helping. The financial, I got to learn. I'm just saying that's one of the things that I'm just like, I have to learn. It's especially with everything going on. I've been forced to learn since Biden took over. I'm like, I have to learn financials. It didn't mean nothing to me as much before, but now I'm like, oh yeah. That's why I'm like, let's learn about this. Let's learn about what can I do to long term, because nobody needs to be going through what I've gone through financially, like being on disability. Nobody needs to have that kind of life. You can only earn so much money and they take it and stuff like that. And it's not good. That's the thing that other people don't typically know, is that when as being on disability, I'm only limited to $1,100 a month total. My entire family, doesn't matter how many kids I've got, that's all I'm limited to having. And then it's like, and then there's people that want to be on it. And I'm like, you're dumb. Stay away from it. I'm trying to get off of it for that reason. Because you can't live. I can't buy a house. I can't do any of that stuff. So yeah, that's why this is like really talking with you last time, and then now today, I'm just like, it's really igniting that passion, that fire, and I'm enjoying it because I'm like, yes, I'm going to break through it, and I'm going to show other people, kind of like what you've been doing. So
that's it. And you'll do it. You've got the attitude. That's it.
Yeah, that's about 95% of that battle.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everybody's time and energy for being able to listen to Lawerence and I again on Healing for the Soul podcast. And thank you for your time and your energy. And thank you so much, Lawerence, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robin.